Hello there. So, I want to give you an idea of multiple influences that I have. I feel that the art of conversation has become pretty um, impatient, and the way in which I speak, in a lot of ways, I might be layering multiple things together. Sometimes they seem irrelevant. And I really value when someone does something strange, like seemingly go on a tangent. Like an example I like to use is I might tell you randomly after saying one thing about the story of an octopus. Something so strangely, seemingly irrelevant, and then I might bring home what an octopus has to do with what I'm saying. I like these little surprises, suspensions of patience, stacking things that seem like there's no way they could possibly go together, and then they do. Kind of similar to the Karate Kid, how he's learning kung fu by painting a fence, uh, but he's not told that he's learning kung fu when he's painting the fence. And it's kind of revealed to him later because had he been told what the thing he was doing at the time was, he wouldn't be focusing on what he's actually doing and learning the thing. So the vast different influences I have can kind of give you an idea of a spectrum of being, and a lot of these influencers might even seem like they're contradicting each other, but it's just multi-layered facets of information. All right, so the first influence is Sir Ken Robinson. He's a college professor who refounded education. He's deceased, unfortunately, but when he was alive, he was the first TED Talk that became famous. Although TED Talks, um, they have their problems as well. Sometimes they've even rejected people of actual merit uh, over other talks that were more popular. But the one that made TED Talks famous was "Why Do Schools Kill Creativity" by Sir Ken Robinson. There's also an excellent RSA animate called "Changing the Paradigm." Uh, he he kind of reveals how divergent thinking uh, deteriorates even over the same children. They were tested. He talks all about this, how creativity and genius deteriorates through the educational system, and how the education system was formulated from the Industrial Revolution to create jobs. And he even, as a college professor himself, says that the people who really benefit from the current structure of education is college professors. He's very funny and witty, and it's it's a reminder that all of us kind of felt ostracized through education by treating us all as if we all have to master the same four subjects, math, history, language, uh, mathematics, and yet those are the only four subjects throughout the entire world, often as the most important, and yet there are so many different people who don't get the jobs that they actually wanted to, or they feel as if they are ostracized in some way. He goes on to talk about the creator of Cats, who was a person who needed to move to think, like, and dancing is said anything to do with the body or the arts often is cut out of education first, seeing as less necessary. So that's Sir Ken Robinson. There's a documentary called Why Beauty Matters, Why Beauty Matters by Roger Scrutton. You can look that up online for free as well. Um, while I feel if you go too far with his worldview, you can veer in too deeply into traditionalism. He's mostly explaining how the world has forgotten beauty um, of the earlier works of arts, not necessarily beauty as we know it, like beauty products. And it's kind of an attack. He's kind of attacking modern forms of art, which are mostly looking at ugliness as truth, or new like art found objects, uh, or uh, this idea that you can create art without actually forming technique, um, and sort of creating an idolized version or something to aspire to. If it's just the ugly truth, is that better than replacing the cult of beauty? And anyway, I think it's very worthy of your time. And you could even like he's kind of attacking the Andy Warhols in a lot of ways of the world. Although Andy Warhol for me was not so much an artist, he was a master of ceremonies, creating a space where people can, other artists can kind of get together and just be who they are. So you can see how those two influences. Sir Ken Robinson, he's talking about how when you were children, when you're a kid, you just have a go and you do things. You don't worry about criticism. You just try things out. Whereas Why Beauty Matters, it's kind of a criticism of people doing whatever they want and calling it art. Worthwhile perspectives of stacking on top of each other. The fourth influence I'll mention is Jonathan Blow. He's a programmer, a video game developer. He did the video games Braid and The Witness. He's working on several other games. But he can be a bit too rigid in his beliefs, I believe. But what he is doing is trying to legitimately create art out of video games, and is even kind of embarrassed by most video game developers, because when you compare the video games that we have now to other forms of art mediums, we're not nearly meeting the standard that we would have on other forms of art. So like The Witness, there was actually no enemies. Knowledge was the key to progression. You weren't chasing after coins or high scores. There's definitely downsides to his way of doing things, but he's trying to advance the medium in ways it never has before, like playing his game Braid, which was all about rewinding time. It reminded me of movies like Donnie Darko or David Lynch, and sure enough, he was a David Lynch fan. I've even had ideas myself about making a video game. Hopefully no one steals this idea. If you do, at least give me a shout out. I had an idea about making a video game that could, it was all about how do we create the next golden age and turn the world into a bunch of artists rather than people who are fighting each other. I noticed that most of the mystical creatures in video games are often destroyed rather than you trying to join forces with them and understand them and realize that these weird, dragons and orcs or demons and angels, they're all components of us. Like, we all have each other's qualities. And I imagined sort of like an RPG, a role-playing game, where while certain after a post-apocalyptic setting, certain beings, there's certain people who survived this post-apocalyptic world, and a lot of them are traumatized, and they're trying to destroy people's flesh and conquer and dominate, whereas you would be an artist trying to restore the world as these beings try to destroy your flesh or conquer you over dominance and survival of the world. While they're trying to do that, you're trying to restore their soul and the artist within them. So they're attacking your flesh, but you're trying to heal and restore its spirit. So that was an idea. It's to be a very complicated game, and I need funding to do that. But one thing at a time. So Jonathan Blow, another interesting thing is there's a friend I used to align with who talked about when the first thing you go to art school is you're a programmer. That's one of the first things they teach you, is that you're a programmer. So it the idea of art being video games being art is not that far fetched. I also think that the more complicated the medium, the harder it is to perfect. I actually think video games are harder than to create than a movie because there's more variance. The reason why people say movies are never as good as the book is because often adaptations are a different thing, but uh, movies is a more complicated medium and more difficult to get right because there's a lot of money involved in creating the physical representation of an environment rather than just putting words on a page. Anyway, it's not like mediums are better than each other. It's just anything is difficult to get like to a really meaningful place. Well, I veered into a couple different things, but you can get a sense of Jonathan Blow as a programmer, how his views widely are very different than Roger Scrutton's or Sir Ken Robinson. So I learned out. I kind of got more into Alan Moore, the comic book writer, through a talk of Jonathan Blow. There's a lot of lectures about how to make good art or video games with Jonathan Blow. What comes to mind is preventing the decline of civilization and video games and the human condition. And that second one, he quotes Alan Moore. Alan Moore was a comic book writer who also didn't really like comic books, and his whole thing with Watchmen is to kind of show you how becoming a superhero might actually be kind of undesirable, or there might be some horrors of the human psyche that get amplified if they became superheroes. And he was fairly disturbed that all people ever wanted to talk about was superheroes, as if that was the only subject that could be explored in comic books. He was embarrassed to be called a comic book writer or creator because of how much of a box the comic book medium itself, how it kind of followed a formula, and he was trying to break formulas. So he has similarities to Jonathan Blow, who was also embarrassed to call himself a video game developer. He would usually just say, "I'm a software developer." But basically, people who are trying to transcend the typical parameters of the structures that they're in, that is kind of the overall sum up of these different influences. If you don't know who Alan Moore is, a great place to start is The Mindscape of Alan Moore. It's a documentary you can watch on YouTube, and he tells you about consciousness, how he decided to become a magician, a shaman, and he's a storyteller telling you about the story of his life and how he was kind of the lowest of the low, and it kind of shaped who he was and how he saw the world, and how he ended up becoming famous and didn't really want to become famous. He was just trying to find a way to do his passion, and do something that represented who he was in a world that would so quickly demean his different perspectives. So everyone I mentioned, there's things about them that I disagree with, but when we harmonize all these different these different influences and layer them on top of each other, you can all of a sudden start getting an idea of like what you agree with and what you don't agree with. But you're grateful that these creators and their perspectives exist, because you can formulate a more complex and nuanced one when you layer them and stack them on top of each other. There's a lot of other influences I will mention over time, but that's good enough for now. I hope this has been informative and gives you an idea of how my mind works. It kind of dips into a lot of different pools, and I might have to explain a lot of different things from seemingly random places to make sense out of a concept. Sometimes I do it really well. Other times it's not an easy thing to try to do. But I would encourage anyone to try it because it's a way of getting excited about the multitude of so many beautiful things that actually are relatable to each other, even if they're not trying to be. So that's all for now. Let me know what you thought of this video. Feel free to comment about the influences mentioned, or if you need like a little more guidance, like, wait, how do I get there again? I'd be happy to maybe put some links in the description or something. Anyway, have a lovely day.